Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/239, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109, and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 239th edition of the Pedalshift Project. My name is Tim Mooney, and I am excited to be bringing you the final installment of Pedalshift Tour Journals' Paw Paw Tunnel Bypass. This is, as I mentioned, the third part of my two-day trip from Hancock, Maryland to Paw Paw, West Virginia, and back, highlighting the Paw Paw Tunnel Bypass Trail, which you hopefully heard about last episode. Little reminder, if this is the first time you're listening to this particular series, I'd say go back a couple of episodes and listen to part one. A little bit easier, but reminder that the Park Service is closing the tunnel and it is going to be doing a massive descaling project for safety reasons along the downstream side of the Paw Paw Tunnel. So when it is closed, it is going to be the only way to get past that by going over the Paw Paw Tunnel Bypass Trail, which, if you listen to part two, was pretty freaking cool and stunning. I had never done it until this trip, and this part highlights my return, which I thought actually was kind of worth sharing with you all, mainly for the very, very beginning, because something surprising, something special, maybe not special, but something surprising to kick off the whole thing. I thought I was going to be going over the trail. Turns out, well, go ahead, listen.
All right, well, we're just going to go through the tunnel. Why not? It occurred to me that it might be possible to go through the tunnel and exit on the other side. And I thought, why the heck not? Let's see it. And what got me thinking that is I saw two people cycling, and it looked like that they had it looked like that they were camping. And then I thought, well, they weren't coming from the trail because I was literally on the trail at that point, at the trailhead. And I thought, well, I suppose they could have gone. I'm going to turn on my phone light. I, of course, did not anticipate this being a thing. So as a result, I don't have my headlamp. I don't have anything. So let's see. Hopefully this will work. You'll be able to hear me and I'll be able to see. I thought this would be worth it. Just I love the sound effects of pushing a bike through here when I record. And B, this would save me some time and some effort. And I feel like I have already seen the trail. I do think that that's a thing. And this is a bit of a YOLO, bit of a gamble. Because if it's not traversable up here, oh, you know what I'm seeing right now? 2 tire tracks. Yeah. So it's pretty clear to me that those cyclists that I saw came right through. Now, this is not always going to be an option. Once the construction is there, you're not going to be able to get through. It's going to be interesting to see what the trail conditions are like, too. Also, oh, by the way, this is a bit of a risk, a bit of a YOLO, just in terms of they're doing this rock scaling project for a reason. There's slides. It's not safe over X period of time. Now I'm going to be moving my tail and going through it, but I mean the difference between spending 45 minutes to an hour on the trail and 10 minutes less pushing through here will be very interesting. Nice musty smell. It's a very distinct smell, the Paw Paw Tunnel. I think I've used my grandmother's basement in Rochester, New York as a similar smell, knowing full well that the number of people listening to this podcast that makes any kind of a difference to is close to zero. So I'm just I rarely have the light. So the canal is filled in here. It's very shallow and it's quite a drop. If you haven't been in the tunnel before, there is a very well-constructed old with looks like 2x2s and 1x1s and 2x4s. It's quite the combination of wood sizes to make a very burly, very sturdy railing, which I think is a great idea because the unevenness of the trail in here is surprising. But just given the conditions in here, it can be so wet that I bet it would be hard to keep this surface from buckling. And it is a very kind of like strange, like every 6 feet or so, there's kind of a very small up and a small down. You can probably even hear it, the bike kind of rattling away here. But it's nice that I'll get a chance to go through this in 2021, at least for this. And if I can traverse it just this once, that would add another year to my list of Paw Paw Tunnel traverses. Because I'd have to say I've probably done it at least once a year since 2011. Yeah, definitely. That's actually something I should mention. This is, I think, the first time I'm mentioning on the show. This will mark 2021, a decade of bike touring for me. I started in earnest in 2011 and started up that summer, maybe that spring, just riding around, and the idea bit me. And then that fall, of course, was the first California ride, the Storm Rider ride with my old friends from 1% for the Planet and whatnot. And that's what started it all. So this is kind of exciting that it's 10 years. And I will also say, it's 10 years, which is roughly 20% of my life at this point, which still feels like that is an underestimate of the place that it holds in my world right now. But kind of exciting, kind of an exciting thing. So if you have ideas on what you would do if you were celebrating your 10-year anniversary in bicycle touring, bike packing, bike adventuring, I would love to hear more of it. Because I do think the next decade is not pivoting away from bike touring by any stretch, but like sort of practicing more of what I preach and, riding my ride, and, maybe the term bike touring is not a proper description of necessarily what I do, nor is bike camping. Adventure cycling is sort of taken, by the Adventure Cycling Association. So bike travel, is that enough? Does that properly describe? I don't know. But in any event, that's sort of on my mind as I'm walking through the Paw Paw Tunnel here and coming to the far end and hopefully being able to exit this end. But if not, I'll just turn right around, and I will not force you to join me on that. And I'll go up that big-ass tunnel. But I'm again seeing twin, and this is water tracks. So I am feeling pretty confident that those cyclists I saw came through the tunnel. It also reminds me of something that I think Preston said on Facebook recently, just because there's a detour, is it really closed? And I think that is a very good way of looking at it. That said, we do like to honor and respect rules when it's appropriate for safety and whatnot, and understand that there are risks involved. Just like there are risks involved with bike touring, bike travel, bike adventuring, etc., etc. All right, I am going to cease. We are, as you can hear, at the downstream end of the tunnel. I can see my breath, so it's still relatively chilly. It was 41 degrees at the summit. I checked because I had the signal there, and I have to say, it sure felt a lot warmer than that. Well, in any event, since this may require some doing, we shall stop recording. And on the other side, you will know whether or not I had to turn around and go all the way back and take the trail, or if I got through. That's what we call a cliffhanger, folks. Spoiler alert, I made it. Towpath closed, do not enter. So we're just gonna push it through here. And yeah, after making fun of not taking a picture on the downstream side of the tunnel, I took a picture on the downstream side of the tunnel. Tradition. All right, I might ride a little bit here, but I won't force you to listen to it. All right, I'll force you to listen to the riding here, although I know the audio isn't great. We are now at the opposite side of the trailhead, and outside of the closure area. Did it look dicey? No more so than it had in the past, quite frankly. I believe it, that there's a major engineering problem that needs to be resolved, but the downstream side had no coverings on it whatsoever. You can still go through. I suspect, though, sometime in the next few weeks, I expect that they're going to start moving in some workers in there doing some of the engineering work that needs to happen there. And I think the opportunity to do what I just did will go away. Interestingly, as I had mentioned before, if I was to choose which direction to do the tunnel in and which direction to do the trail in, I just did it the opposite. So there's that. But I just conserved quite a bit of energy. But I also didn't get a chance to get a look at that viewpoint again, which was stunning. I'm still taken by that. That's the kind of viewpoint that I pine for on rides in Oregon and California. So it's kind of nice to have that as an option here, and I'll certainly consider doing it. The closure of the Paw Paw Tunnel does create some interesting things during what I like to refer to as the teeth of summer. And, how excited will I be coming from the cabin towards Cumberland when it's 96 degrees with humidity? Not too excited. Not too excited at all. So yeah, it is interesting. I'm through riding the C&O this year may be better done earlier or much later. So that's something to think about as I consider my options for touring this year. Having done so much of the C&O last year, I think I can safely put it off a little bit more if I've got tours that are available to me, alternative tours this year, which I'm looking forward to post-vaccination, I think. So, more to come on that, and heading back to camp to fully pack up, get reloaded, and heading back to Hancock. All right, all packed up. That took, as always, longer than I anticipated. I'm just gonna walk down the trail and talk for a moment here. I am carrying so much weight. It's funny how, because I unloaded last night, this morning it felt, oh wow, definitely feels a little bit later riding. But boy, loaded up, holy moly. Now I'm starting to feel like, now I understand why perhaps I struggled a little bit more yesterday, and may, for the next several hours, struggle a little bit, because it's just a lot of weight. So I think that's a big factor. Being a little bit out of biking shape is a factor. I haven't mentioned this, but I gained, like so many people may have, gained some COVID weight. And when I say some, way more than I wanted. And so I've been spending the last couple of months shedding a lot of that, and I'm close to where I was before the holidays, and I still have a few months to go to get back to where I'd like to be. So that's certainly a factor as well. And I think also that when you're in calorie reduction mode, your body doesn't just shift into athletic mode very quickly. So I'm sure that that's a factor too. So, but anyways, yeah, pointing the bike back downstream, taking one last fond look here at the river at this, it's a really beautiful campsite. It's interesting. There's you're very close to somebody's campground, private campground on the other side. They weren't there last night, but they've got a camper there and whatnot. And it's interesting because it just feels like, oh, that's a little close, but it's on the other side of the river, All right, well, I'm going to point the bike and get going as we sort of bring this adventure to a close. It's been a really fun bit of surprises and of a little YOLOs here and there, and looks like a cooler day today, but beautiful. The sun's out, and I think it's just going to be excellent riding. So really looking forward to putting capstone to this 2-day adventure. From Stickpile Hill Hiker Biker Campsite, I am taking a quick break here, just water up a little bit. I think I'm gonna enjoy my lunch at Devil's Alley, which is another 5.1 miles away. One thing that's kind of an interesting thing about these campsites, especially in this part of the trail, is that they are about every 5 miles or so. And I've often thought, especially in the hot weather, that's a really good time to just stop, even if it's just for a minute or two, and give your hands a break, give your back a break, give your neck a break, legs a break, and just sort of, I just straddle the bike and take a few sips and move on. I don't do that enough. I should do that more often, and I think it's a smart way to do the C&O. For folks that are used to riding roads or terrain where it's some up and down, you'll be surprised how much a flat terrain that's got some resistance to it, the C&O, great example, how hard that can be compared to your expectations. You're constantly spinning. There's no rest. And so you have to stop to take a rest, essentially. And I find that to be a helpful thing. There is also a slight grade in the going upstream, going towards Cumberland. It's barely perceptible, but it is there, and it's another factor to potentially take a look at. And there are from time to time some very, very small hilly grades that you have to contend with as well. So you actually have to shift occasionally beyond just maybe like moving one or two gears in any given direction, depending on how you're feeling, and headwinds and all that other kind of stuff. So I do think taking breaks at the campsites are just good reminders, especially if nobody's there. You just pull over to the side, take a few sips, enjoy a couple of minutes, and feel a little bit better, and then move on. One thing I've noticed that I always forget about at the beginning of any given bike touring season is the sits bones, the spots where I contact with the saddle. Normally, I don't feel a thing. I've got a stock saddle. I don't have a very special saddle on this bike at all. But after the first day of riding in early tours of a season, boy, do I feel it for a few minutes. So I have to build up my sits bones resistance as well before I kind of jump into touring altogether. Feel super strong today compared to yesterday, but it's also early. The sun is perfect. We got to be somewhere in the 40s, I'm thinking, maybe upper 40s. And just the sun is that perfect degree of warmth on you in this kind of a situation. And it feels good when I stop. It feels good when I go. It's a great temperature to be riding in this kind of like low to mid 50s down to about this, I've got just the one layer on. I've got a, merino wool layer on top and just, some regular bicycling pants on the bottom. I call them bicycling pants, but I don't even know what to call them. Enjoying this. Got about probably a couple hours left, give or take. I think that when I'm at Devil's Alley, I'll probably be about a third of the way done of the riding today. Minus, of course, the little mountain adventure and the trip to Paw Paw. So, all right, more drinking, more hydrating. It feels good. By the way, that trip to Paw Paw was really good. I probably could have made it with the leader, but I don't like drinking my last liter of water on any given trip, especially when I got 3 miles to go. You just never know. Yesterday I drank so much water. Today, I got a kind of a Gatorade-y thing, so I'm getting some electrolytes as well. In addition to it, I water it down as I've mentioned before in past pods. Just feels a lot better to be like, okay, I can drink however much I want. I've got plenty of water. Also a reminder, never leave home on this trail in particular without my Sawyer water filter. It weighs next to nothing. It takes up almost no space, and I should have brought it. Okay, enough self-flagellating. Best laid plans. I was literally unpacking to go down to the to the picnic table, and 2 people just rode right up, went straight down there, and I'm like, well, shit, man. All right, well, I guess I'll just eat here at the water pump and enjoy the better view up here. It's much better. Not bitter. It's cool. I am at Devil's... well, now I've even forgotten again. Devil's Alley. Devil's Alley hiker-biker. Okay, so I am not upset. Everything was fine. I enjoyed my lunch, and the view here is just stunning. There's something to be said about riding this trail with no foliage at all, because the views that you get of the river are just superior. You really get a sense of what a truly beautiful wild river it is in this section. No dams, no nothing up here. It's really quite special. All right, off we go. I've got about 20-ish miles until I'm done with the first tour of 2021. Let's do it. Indigo Neck hiker-biker campsite. Taking a little bit of a break. This is in the 2-mile stretch between the kind of very short, stubby part of the Western Maryland Rail Trail that takes you towards where Bill's place is. There's a big parking lot right there. Generally, I think, while it's beautiful and nice and everything, certainly is doable from a skipping perspective. This is another campground, by the way, much like the one that I stayed at last night, where there is and this time it's a stone structure. No roof, of course, but it's got the old fireplace in there, which you would not be able to use because it's elevated. Somebody has put a fire circle in here, but it is flat. You could be in here. A good windbreak on a windy night, but this is a really nice campground. There's quite a bit of flat space. This is a great one for a group camping setup, and in fact, I would love to know. One of these days I'm going to have to go through and try to figure out which sites I've stayed at and which ones I haven't, because I think at some point in my life I would like to make sure that I've spent at least one night at every single one of these down the line. Not a project I need to worry about right now. I am listening to the most recent Sprocket podcast. This will be released many weeks prior by the time you're hearing this, but this is Brock Dittus's last episode, and Brock gave a shout out to me about how the Sprocket, something like wouldn't be half the show, or Aaron maybe said that, but I have to say that's not true. Well, maybe, I don't know. I will not step on what they say, but I will say that their show was an inspiration for me to get back into podcasting, and was very much an antecedent to me creating the Pedalshift project. So right back at you. And it is a bummer to hear that Brock is going to be moving on from podcasting, but that doesn't mean that he's disappearing and going away, and I am hoping to get a chance to bike with him someday soon, because someday I will be able to go to Oregon again and maybe get a chance to meet up with folks and ride again, which would be kind of fun. Today, however, the whole reason why you're listening to this show has been glorious. I'm very happy with how things have been going. I think I am going to take the Western Maryland Rail Trail back to Hancock. Very typically, I will, in this direction, take the Western Maryland Rail Trail for all sorts of good reasons. But there is, it'd be nice to get off of the Cinder Trail, even though it's actually in quite good quality. I don't think that the trail conditions necessarily are warranting it, but maybe just a change of pace. I haven't been on the Western Maryland Rail Trail in months, so it would be kind of nice to be back on it again. So that'll be in the next couple of miles. I'm going to enjoy a little bit of hydration, and maybe consider a bar. I think I only have my one bar left. If I have two, I will definitely have one. I don't know if other folks do this, but sometimes I sort of covet that very last morsel of food that I have. Just as sort of like, I'm going to need this to get through the last 5 miles or something like that. So I'm not hungry per se, but stoking the fire is not a bad idea, even after having a pretty good-sized lunch. I do not regret getting the second calzone now because it made for an easier day. I didn't have to stay in the Paw Paw Liberty any longer than I had to, waiting for food with the maskless band of folks, some of whom may have been vaccinated, I now realize in retrospect, but I doubt it. And let's see, yeah, so it was good. It was a perfect thing for lunch. All right, I'm sure you'll hear from me at least a couple more times before we wrap this up. It's been a beautiful day riding. What a great trip. On the Western Maryland Rail Trail, about, say, 8 miles from Hancock. I feel good enough about my ETA that I sent the text for the pickup, and the reward is we're going to drive to a different town and go to our favorite taqueria, and that will be my, I don't know, lunch, dinner, something, because I have eaten my last bar. I have no more calories left. I think I might have a hot chocolate packet buried deep someplace, but that would be sad. So I think I should be okay, and we'll be meeting Kimberly in about an hour. And with 8 miles on a paved trail, despite the headwinds, because of course, overnight the winds have changed direction. Such is the bike adventure life, is it not? But in any event, it's cooling down. It feels like a little bit every time I stop it. I feel a little on the chilly side of things. But I will say the sun is still out, and I'm starting to feel it on my neck. So I've covered that up with a bandana, so I look like some 1950s TV show cowboy or something like that, which I always find hysterical. But it is nice. It does keep the sun off the neck, and that helps a lot. All right, I'm gonna keep going. And next time you hear me, might be wrapping things up. This is the time when my my cycling goes faster, and the time between recording stops gets longer. So next stop might be Hancock, unless my fender busts, because that's what happens on these trips lately, huh? And we are back. Not just Hancock, but actually back at my cabin. As it turned out, Kimberly was there early, so I didn't get a chance to record the final entry into the tour journal for this episode. I have to say it was a really great time. It felt really good to get back into the saddle again. I think missing out on that January-February ride this year really ended up putting an impact on fitness level and a whole bunch of other things, but it's been a while, and, it's very clear to me that I've got some work to do to be able to get into, good bike travel shape, And I was also really grateful that I was able to do an on-the-trail fix of a very catastrophic issue with my front fender. That was kind of good that I was able to just kind of assess it and go, okay, let's fix it this way. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, well, let's fix it that way. And then when that ultimately didn't work for, riding comfortably, well, just rip the damn thing off. So that was a good thing. I'm glad I got eyes on that trail. I do think that the trail is going to be necessary for a lot of folks if you choose to, and it's possible if there's no workers there, if there's no blockage there, and you want to take the tunnel. I think that it's clearly possible, at least at this point. You'll need to take care and do that at your own risk, of course. And know that you are definitely not acting as it is signed by the National Park Service. So just know all of those things. But there is going to come a point in time when that tunnel is not an option, and probably for an extended period of time. So the good news is that the view up there is worth it. But think of me saying those words when it's 96 degrees and humidity, and you're pushing up a bike with 40 pounds of gear. Then you may not necessarily feel the same way. But that said, this was a great trip, and I'm really looking forward to doing more tours. I am looking forward to doing the C&O, do a full through ride of the C&O at some point. I may do it later in the year this year. I've had a lot of opportunity to get to know that trail even better in the last year. So I think I'm looking forward to tours that differ from that. And what those look like, I have no idea. I know I've got some ideas. You've been with me on the scouting trip for that ride to Philadelphia. That's certainly one of the ones that is likely to be early on in my post-vaccination stage. But, when all is said and done, it's I'm going to take it as it comes and see what's in the realm of possible, what's safe, what's responsible. And I think a lot of that has to do with stuff that for many of us is going to be happening in the next few weeks, or you may have even been vaccinated by now. In fact, by the time you hear this, maybe I've been vaccinated. Who the heck knows? But in any event, I am looking forward to what the 2021 season has in store. Other than that catastrophic failure of the fender, I hope that this ride portends for what 2021 has in store.
So I would say that for anybody doing the C&O this year, there are a couple of things that we've been talking about on the show that would be different than in past years. Number one is the closure of the ferry over by White's Ferry to the Virginia side that still seems to be closed. There was some hope that the new owner would open it up, but apparently that might not happen until 2022. So there's a little bit of a bonus news for you. Secondly is the Paw Paw Tunnel Bypass Trail. I think it's obviously doable. People have done it all the time. The view is spectacular. It's worth it for that, but you're going to work for it. So if you're fully loaded, then, be prepared that it's going to take you at least a solid hour to do that. Whereas maybe it would take you 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more. Depends on how many people are in the tunnel for the faster way to do it. Anyways, that's the status of the C&O, and I'm really glad I got a chance to share that all with you early in the season for those of you who are thinking about doing the trail. And if you're not going to do the trail, hey, you got to listen to an interesting tour journal. It was an interesting ride. Little bit of programming note here to close out the show. I'm going to be doing something a little different for the next 2 episodes. Really different because something interesting has come about. I'm going to be building out a micro camper from essentially a hand-me-down sedan that I'm going to be hypothetically using for bike touring adventures. I say hypothetically because I'm not 100% sure I'm going to necessarily keep this vehicle. I haven't had a vehicle. My partner and I have shared a Jeep for the better part of a couple of years now. I don't think we need 2 cars. But, this is interesting, and it's a project, an itch that I've wanted to scratch for a while. I think I've mentioned that I'm into van life YouTubers for a variety of reasons. There's a whole bunch of that's a deep cut if you really want to get into it. But this is going to be a beta version of something that I think would have a great deal of utility for bike touring in the future, and I'm going to be using it. Boy, am I going to be using it. Boy, am I going to be testing it. This is a beta version. I won't spoil it, but on the next episode, I'm going to talk about why this is happening, how this is happening, and some of the utility that I see in bike touring. And for the next couple of episodes, you're going to hear all about the build out and how you can potentially convert an existing vehicle that you have into something that can be helpful for glamping-ish adventures, stealth adventures, and more importantly for your bike touring adventures down the line. So that's all starting next week. Oh, by the way, as I mentioned last episode, we're going to be doing a live show on Friday, April 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. If you are not in the Eastern Time Zone, calculate using the internet or your favorite slide ruler or whatever you would use to figure out the time zone for you. Topics and more are to be announced, but I'm sure a segment will be on the micro camper build out as a touring enhancer. Go to pedalshift.net/live for the details. Programming notes. This is all programming notes, but here's the final programming note. This live show, the one that's coming on April 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, that will be rebroadcast as an episode of the pod, as I usually do. It's going to be on May 6th, which will knock out the best of out of its usual first Thursday perch, and it will go into the second Thursday in May, which is 5 carry the 1, May 13th. Okay, see you next week with some interesting stuff. And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedalshift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedalshift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows and covering new tours. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options. If you're not into the small monthly thing, check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittus, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadis, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Byron Patterson, Joachim Robert, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Henkel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Aviles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Dan Gebhardt, Jody Zeranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Bigel, Greg Middlemas, Connie Moore, William Goffman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latois Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Tom Bilch, Ronald Piroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messenger, David Grotke, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Lecco, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCulloch, John Hickman, Jack Smith, Carl Presso, David Neves, Patty Louise, Terry Fitzgerald, Peter Steinmetz, Timothy Fitzpatrick, Dave Fletcher, James Stratakis, David Neves, Mike Lazewski, Hank O'Donnell, David Zanoni, David Weil, Matthew Sponseller, Chad Reno, Daniel Greger, Spartan Dale, Carolyn Ferguson, and thanks also to all past and anonymous members for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfields' latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.